1 in 5 adults don't want children, and they're deciding early in life. Bayern, what? I know this is anecdotal, but I asked me students, middle schoolers, every year from 2016 to 2022 if they planned on having kids when they grow up. About a third of them every year had decided that they did want kids. I taught in both suburban and rural settings. The one pattern I found, regardless of cultural or ethnic backgrounds, students from poor families wanted lots of kids, and kids from middle class to wealthy families typically wanted either no kids or have small families. Why poor people wanted kids. How many of the people in the study who are without kids are double income high earners? Unfortunately, these data don't have a good measure of income. However, we don't know that the sample is representative of the Michigan population in terms of age, race, sex, education, income, and politics. Removed, removed, removed. Does anyone have any source on how this percentage has changed throughout the years? Is it exceptionally high or low or similar to previous years? Most studies focus on fertility, so there isn't much data on child-free people. In this research, we're interested in whether people want to have children, not whether they're able to have children. That said, this number is pretty consistent with our earlier estimate in 2020 and a preliminary estimate from data we just finished collecting. I'm surprised it's not a higher number. As far as I understood the study, that number includes everyone over the age of 18, i.e. it includes baby boomers and their parents. If you'd limit it to people who still have that decision ahead of them, you'd likely see something more in line with your expectations. Removed. That's the Reddit effect. If you spend some time here, you'd think at least 50 of people don't want kids. Wonder if that number is people who are very strictly child-free, as there might be more people who don't want to bring a child into the world but might be willing to adopt. I don't want kids, but eventually, if I get a good partner, maybe adopting onto tree and give them a better life could be a consideration. I'm surprised it's not a lower number. Same thing happens with birds. They don't feel safe. They don't lay eggs, or just nature doing its thing. Removed. Removed. Along with that, some people just want to be child-free. Obviously, most people on Reddit are going to attribute their own politicized reasoning to this, but in reality, it has almost everything to do with increasing levels of income and education, particularly among women, rather than perception of safety. Northern and Western Europe have consistently lower birth rates than the United States, despite lower rates of poverty, murder, etc. Birth rates in Florida actually increased significantly in the immediate aftermath of the Cuban Missile Crisis. I found this bit interesting because I had thought about the groups this way. Child-free adults comprised over 1. Free adults come Fifth 21, 64 of the adult population in Michigan, and were second in number only to parents. This means that child-free adults were the single largest group of adults without children, exceeding not yet parents as well as childless, undecided, and ambivalent adults. So sure, child-free is a minority group overall, but they are the largest group of non-parents. That is to say, of people who haven't had kids yet, the group that has decided they want to be having kids is the largest. Most of us can't even afford to support ourselves. Why would we bring kids into this? That's the reason I decided at 20 years old I didn't want kids. I've been steadily employed 40 hours a week for over 15 years now, and all I have to show for it is a car and a savings account. I'm not having kids because I very literally am not able to afford sustaining a second life. There are times my rats have to eat me leftovers instead of proper rat food, and they're the cheapest pet you can get besides a goldfish. Meatfish the same way. She has 2 dogs and an apartment. She's been employed since 16 years old and has basically no savings. We're both in our 30s and have maybe 10 in assets between the two of us. Between us, that's 30 years of constant employment, and if we sold all our possessions and pooled our resources, we would be able to afford a Honda Fit. I'm surprised no one else is talking about this. Highest inflation in decades. We're going on over in Eastern Europe still, trying to come out of a global pandemic, first major one in 100 years. Lot of stuff to think about, but the biggest one is support. I'd consider having a kid if I could support myself and a family maybe in 5–10 years, but not right now. Children are a luxury expense in this economy. Correct. If the government wants its people to make kids, they have to build out an education system and social structure that would incentivize that goal. America has failed at both. Removed, 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 removed. I'll be honest, I was expecting a smaller number because people look at me like I said I want to kick their toddler into the sun when I say no, I'm sure I don't want to be a parent. I guesstimated it was like 5 to 10 of the population. Yeah, that was a bit motivation for doing this study. It's a hidden population and hard to identify in most surveys, especially official data from census. But over multiple studies, we're finding it's a pretty sizable group. This is so interesting to me. I'm a father of 2 young boys. I adore them. I adore being a father. And I 100 get why someone would want kids. Removed. Got me vasectomy at 28. 7 years later, no regrets. In Portland, Oregon, it feels like the opposite. I am 26, know like 5 people with kids under 30, and I am the only one at all in my friend group who wants them. Lots of queer folk, not that that's a disqualification, and we're all crazy liberals. I was surprised the number was higher. Then I thought about my family, most of whom don't live in Portland, and though they are all 30, literally all of me cousins have kids. So I would be very interested in more localized studies. I would bet the Portland number would be a national outlier with how few children wanters there are based on my experience. Soon after I had me first kid and returned to work from a short parental leave, one of me coworkers, a female who really liked her career, nervously told me that she never wanted to have children, and I said, "Ok, hey, listen. Good for you. At least you're not one of those people who feels the pressure to stop what you want to do to have kids." She became emotional and told me that every single person she knew who had children made it a mission to tell her how she needs to also have one. I believed her too. A lot of people have kids and become breeding evangelicals. Same. 28 and am running out of time. My money is enough for me, but put a child into the mix and I'd live in poverty, and I have what is considered a good job in Switzerland. Even here players starting to become child-free. My wife and I had kids, but we often joke about if we did. kids so we could have a smaller house, nicer cars, less stress, and be able to invite a niece or nephew to our extravagant annual trip to our beach house in Thailand for getting good grades. Oh, and we both agreed we'd look a lot younger and healthier having all the free time to exercise, sleep enough, and not stress about what kind of human we're creating. I was raised in a compassionate environment, and I do not think I would be able to give a child that either. A child deserves better than that. Same, I had narcissistic parents and learned to raise myself basically from a very young age. I went no contact in my 30s, wish I had the day I turned 18. But at this point I just want to breathe and relax the rest of my life. I have never had the chance to before. Removed. America's every man for himself culture makes having kids miserable. There's been plenty of studies on that. And God forbid you have a disabled or even a neurodivergent child. Unless you're rich, you're fucked. Several write. Wing figures have bemoaned falling birth rates, and besides the fact that it's almost always implied that they mean birth rates among white people, I find it ironic that they are also the very same people who are against the kinds of support and infrastructure that would make parenting less risky and arduous. Mom of a mostly nonverbal child with autism. There is so little support. And now she's 12 and ostensibly in knee can make or be involved in her reproductive decisions. I'm terrified where the country is headed. What if she gets pregnant? Removed. Removed. But not wanting to have kids isn't just specific to America, though. Europe and many parts of Asia are below replacement rates. I'm 41 and have known since me early 20s that having kids just isn't for me. Call me selfish if you want, but there are many things I would much rather be doing than devoting me energy to childcare. I got extremely lucky and had a tubal ligation in me mid-30s because I was tired of people saying you'll change your mind. It wager to guess the vast majority of people in this thread and on this site in general would call you the opposite of selfish for not wanting kids. 45, and I knew me whole life I did want kids. Did like dolls, refused to babysit, never held a baby. Some people just know. Don't want or can't afford. I wonder. Our son's daycare was more than our mortgage. Not a huge enticement signing up to scrape by for at least several years. Don't want. For me can afford it, but me belief is unless being a parent is something you need to feel fulfilled in life, then it's just not worth it. I also feel like having kids is one of the biggest gambles anyone can make. People say you'll love your kid no matter what, which is often true. However, I've seen kids that would enjoy parenting about 5, and kids that would loathe parenting the other 95. Probably the biggest reason for me to not have kids, I would prefer to retire early and travel in me 40s or 50s than be counting down the years until retirement and putting me kids through college at that age or whatever they would decide to do after 18. What? Whoa, boo, po, preview, po, do, po, 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 do, po, po, do, oh, oh, do, do, don't want. There are many factors for not wanting a child, and maybe they sound selfish, but then tell me how having a kid and cloning yourself and creating a human being who will ultimately suffer and burn while this planet gets worse and worse is a good thing. I can't afford one now, but I have never liked children. I've never wanted one. I want to be able to travel and do what I want without having to think about a child I have to take care of. I don't want to physically push a child out of me or be pregnant or have me body fucked up and hormones messed with. I could go on. It's not about money form. Not even one bit. Removed. Removed. Well, ye gestures at everything. I'm honestly surprised that the number is higher, given how ridiculously expensive the cost of living is right now. People can't afford to buy a house. Hell, they can barely afford to buy groceries and pay rent. How can they expect to take care of a baby? The difference between not wanting a child and can't afford a child. That number is people who would like to have a kid but aren't currently able to. People who have decided to never have kids. Removed. Removed. I decided when I was 18 I did want kids. I'm 40 now. There are a lot of things I regret in life, but not having kids is one of them. Removed. 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 I did want kids, never had any. No shame in that. It's up to you alone whether you want kids. No one's business but yours. Kudos to the people who don't have them over the losers who don't take care of them. And there's a lot of loser parents in the world who should have never had them. As a father, I can safely say that there is nothing wrong with deciding you don't want kids. I love it, but it's not for everyone. The last thing the world needs are parents who don't want their kids. I still remember me father telling me that I was an accident, and I've resented him ever since. Edit. Just to clarify, it wasn't just that I was unplanned. He didn't make any attempts to be a father. I'm 44 and I might talk with him for 5–10 minutes per year. Removed. I think it's great. Children is the goal in life for everyone, and we should all understand that. Good job breaking it down by child-free, childless, undecided, not yet parent, ambivalent. Most people still think no children, infertility, and there wasn't a choice, so they are sad for them. There are many people who simply aren't interested. They seem happy. Removed. Removed. After listening to me coworkers complain of all day about the things they have to do after work for their children, I'm so happy to say I'm going to home nap. Because what you have to provide for kids has increasing tendency. 100 years ago, the kid is fit and has a roof above his or her head. Now, it's trillion things you consider even before thinking of having kids. That was not true 100 years ago. My grandfather lived through the Dust Bowl, and he was kicked out of the family shack where approximately 20 people lived in a couple hundred square feet and sent out west because everyone was going to starve to death. The prosperity everyone points to was approximately 50s. 70s, aka 50. 70 years ago. I don't want kids, which is great because with above median income at a fantastic job with bonkers benefits, I still can't afford to live within a 40-minute drive of my office. Like, my income doesn't qualify me to apply for an apartment. I can't afford paying for just me. I can't imagine paying for someone else. It's because we aren't prospering. We are always having to worry about the near medium-term future or even just the short-term future for ourselves. It's just unrealistic to bring children to the world. Right. I can't even give myself the comfortable life I want. I would have a kid if I felt like it could guarantee me family a safe and happy life. I don't feel that way, so I won't have a kid. As someone who early in life did want kids, then changed my mind, the one single thing that prospective parents need to ask themselves is, do I really want to be a parent? The answer had better be an unequivocal yes, and for no other reason than you really want to do this. Not because your parents, society, or anyone or anything else is telling you that you ought to or have to. Parents owe this to their prospective children. Your family has to exist because you want to share love, not because you need to cross something off of a perceived list. I also don't have a problem with young people choosing sterilization early if they do change their minds. There are lots of kids that need to be adopted. And if it was good enough for my dad when he married my mom and I came along with the package, it's good enough for anybody. Why are some people violently opposed to the thought of others not having children? Misery loves company. They feel called out, usually. Lots of people have doubts about having kids and think you are bringing those doubts out loud when you are talking about it bring good not having kids. Some people also just can't understand things they don't understand, thus it confuses them into aggression. It's the same with how people get mad over same-sex marriage or relationships, trans people, non-binary people, asexuality, X. Removed. They've already heard from me adult children that they don't plan to have children if their own. I told them I am happy for them and will never pressure either of them to make me a grandparent. I have friends who do this and I think it is most selfish. You're fantastic. Your kids are lucky. When a country's minimum wage won't rise, laws are becoming increasingly dystopian, agriculture being devastated by climate change, housing is prohibitive and health care is free. Who can blame the generations refusing to bring a child into the world? We claimed we wanted better for our children, but our actions have belied our words.